For me, it was soup, any type of soup. I hated it. Now I can't get enough of it. What's a food that you hated growing up, but now you love? Story 1. Brussels sprouts. A cousin brought them to a picnic but used a different recipe with bacon as flavoring. Changed my perspective forever. I now eat Brussels sprouts whenever I can. Story 2. Carrots. My mom had to force me to eat them when I was a boy. Now, though, I always go back for seconds if carrots are on the menu, and they're usually the item I eat first on my plate. I really love carrots now. Story 3. Raw onions on anything. If I bit into anything that had onions, I would immediately gag in disgust as a kid. Yesterday, I grilled hot dogs for Memorial Day and put a large amount of raw onions on my hot dog and enjoyed it. I didn't really hate steak growing up, but it was never my favorite, nor was it considered special to me like many people do. It was because my parents cooked it well done. Also, my dad is so distracted and can't just leave it alone, so he ends up overcooking and drying it out. When I tried properly cooked steak at medium from a restaurant, I was like, oh, now I get it. Story 4. I was such a little snot. A super picky eater, like fast food or nothing. My folks were very busy starting their business, so that was basically all we ate, along with Little Debbie's, cosmic brownies, zebra cakes, and Swiss rolls. I was massive. Then, as I got older and started trying to lose weight, I found that I was seriously missing out. I will literally eat just about anything now and have a very wide range of tastes. Also, traditional bone-in wings. I thought it was too hard and not enough meat. I love them now. Story 5. I wasn't a big fan of beetroot, but that was mainly because we got the stuff from a jar instead of fresh. I changed my mind when some Polish people gave me a bowl of borscht. Story 6. Mushroom. It is now my favorite food. I hated the texture and look growing up, but now I will eat any type of mushroom. I try to find as many different varieties of mushrooms as possible, chop them up, sauté, and then make a puree. Combine with cream cheese, and you have a nice mushroom spread. And yes, before you ask, the magic ones too. Story 7. Fish. My parents never liked fish, and when they did eat it, it was always gross frozen stuff from the freezer aisle. I ended up working in a meat and fish department at a grocery store. Completely changed my opinion of fish. Story 8. I grew up in the South. Imagine most people's reaction to this list. Tea. Still prefer it unsweetened now, but will accept non-sugar sweeteners. Grits. Mayonnaise, especially for salad uses. Okra. Uncooked tomatoes. Outside of those, I was generally not a fan of most vegetables that weren't a pepper or potato, and I did not like black pepper or mustard or sweet potatoes either. And I grew up in a house where my mom would regularly have a tomato sandwich. Bread, mayonnaise, black pepper, tomato slices, mayonnaise, bread. There are others I could probably name, but those are some of the biggest ones. Story 9. I have never been fussy, so I've never hated anything growing up. But having the freedom as an adult to try new things and explore new cultures is my favorite thing to do. Story 10. My mom used jars of ragu when she made spaghetti, and I didn't like that sauce, so I didn't like spaghetti. Then, as an adult, I had spaghetti at a restaurant and liked it, so I started making it at home. Story 11. Pickled banana peppers, like those that come with Papa John's pizza, were something I enjoyed in my childhood and throughout college. I really love them now in my 30s and probably like pickled things more than I ever did. Story 12. The list is endless as I was so fussy. I would eat chips as a child when we went out. I now love vegetables and mussels, which I would say are the things my family are most shocked about now. Story 13. Soup. I hated it as a kid, the texture, the look, and the smell of it. Some soups, like pea soup, would make me gag. Now, I love chicken noodle, potato bacon and cheese, and cream of cauliflower and cheese soup. Story 14. Cheese. Always got a hamburger. Gagged at the smell of mac and cheese. Despised cheese and crackers. Salsa over cheese dip. Pizza was the only exception. And now it's basically reversed. Love that stuff. Story 15. Bitter gourd, or as we call it in Hindi, Karela. I used to absolutely despise it when I was a kid, but now I've grown to love it. Especially pan-fried with some sliced onions, salt, and green chili paste. Story 16. Olives are a big one for me. I love snacking on marinated olives and feta these days. As a kid, I couldn't stand them. Butter, randomly enough too, I couldn't stand butter on sandwiches. I hated the texture and the taste. Can't get enough of it these days though. Nothing is finer than a crusty loaf with a slab of butter. Steak is another one. Like many others, my mother had zero idea how to cook meat. Steaks were always borderline cremated, and dry flip-flop style pork chops were the norm. Chickens were roasted for so long the backbone literally falls out when you lift it out of the roasting dish. The list is endless. I was 29 when I first had a steak cooked properly. I'd avoided it because I figured I didn't like them, but I can safely say a medium rare steak is up there with my favorites now. Story 17. Vanilla yogurt. I thought it was bitter for some reason. I actually didn't like the peach ones either, now that I think of it. Both are my favorite flavors now. Story 18. Asparagus. One of my mother's first few boyfriends that I can remember after my parents got divorced was a child-hating, stick-in-the-mud person who, when he wasn't being unpleasant to me and my siblings, worked as a chef in a nearby restaurant. One of the meals he made to try to impress my mother included a side of asparagus. Due to the fact that my mother was born, raised, and grew up poor, and since we often struggled to make ends meet, I wasn't allowed to leave the table until all of my food was eaten. I wasn't a particularly picky child, despite being autistic, though we didn't know at the time. In fact, I was honestly pretty good at trying new things and getting through bad food. However, the asparagus he cooked was the most unpleasant thing to ever appear on my dinner plate. I sat at the table until everyone else had left and had been gone for at least 30 minutes, and I ended up using the old trick of flipping the plate upside down into the kitchen trash can, hiding the nasty vegetable from sight. That was when I was about 6 or 7. A year or so ago, my stepmother made a dish that contained asparagus, and to be polite, I added some to my plate. I didn't expect to like it, but I wanted to at least try it for her sake. Hesitantly, I brought my fork towards my mouth to try the vegetable that had tortured me those years ago, and I bravely just put it into my mouth. It was delicious. I genuinely enjoyed it and made sure to get myself another helping of the asparagus dish. In fact, I more than enjoyed the dish. I loved it. So much so that I've requested it since then, and I'm not usually one to make meal requests. I'm so glad I tried it again after years of distrusting asparagus. I even had asparagus last night. I now think that my mother's then boyfriend was just bad at cooking asparagus, and probably other things too. But I only remember eating the one meal he made, as I'm pretty sure I've repressed memories from that time as a trauma response. Story 19. Fish. I absolutely could not even sit next to a plate that had any kind of fish on it whatsoever. No matter how it was prepared or what it was served with, I was not coming near it. That was, of course, until I reached the age of 17, when my best friend talked me into trying a small bite of freshly smoked salmon he bought one night at a local fish market here in Redondo Beach, California. From that first bite to this very day, 47 years later, I have not stopped eating fish 2 to 3 times a week. Story 20. I absolutely hated mustard and relish as a kid. Now I put them on anything remotely appropriate. Also, a lot of vegetables, but that was more because they were always just boiled into soggy mush in my house growing up. So many vegetables are great when raw, fried, or baked. Story 21. Coleslaw. It's pretty much a staple where I'm from, and I hated it as a kid. Still not my favorite, but I've grown to appreciate it. In my opinion, it makes a terrible side dish, but it's nice as a condiment. Story 22. Greens like mustard and collard, liver, Brussels sprouts, olives, and spicy foods. Especially spicy foods. I can't live without the heat now. I couldn't live with it as a younger me. Story 23. None. Literally, the opposite has happened to me. I loved mushrooms and bacon fat growing up. Put either in front of me now, and you would see me vomit instantly. Story 24. I've never really been picky. I didn't used to appreciate good fish or spicy food. But a more honest answer is just a well-cooked meal at home. I'm always running from one place to another, and dinner is either takeout or something thrown together with what we've got on hand. Story 25. Loads of fruits. As a kid, I would only eat apples and strawberries. At some point, there was a switch and I now eat loads of different fruits. Still not bananas, though. I still find them disgusting. Story 26. Onions. I hated onions. Then I ate some fried onions and potatoes for the first time, and it changed my life. If I was eating any type of sandwich with meat as a kid, it had to have onions. Story 27. Beans. I never ate beans. Pinto, black, black-eyed, white, kidney, none. As an adult, I love them and I absolutely love refried beans. As a kid, they seemed disgusting until I tried them at like 38 years old. Story 28. Recently, I started to like so many things that I couldn't stand the taste of when I was younger. Some of the things that I suddenly started liking are broccoli, asparagus, actually most vegetables, mussels, some cheeses, and many salad dressings. I think it's just my taste buds maturing, or maybe me maturing. I'm 18 now, and some of these things I haven't tasted in years as I've been avoiding them because I already knew that I didn't like them. Story 29. I hated tomatoes. Would pick them out of everything even if they were tiny and chopped up in a salad or wrap. It was immediate no. But now I love tomatoes. Not really the gooey part, though, but I always add them to whatever I am eating. Story 30. I was not a big steak person until my 20s. I would slather them in ketchup at family gatherings because I preferred that to the steak taste. These days I love a medium rare steak. Story 31. Hard-boiled eggs. Sandy texture. When cold, they smell of sulfur. Hated that as a kid, wanted soft-boiled for more umami yolk. But now I love boiling 4 eggs hard and just enjoying them. The fullness felt is very specific to them alone. Story 32. Sprouts. My mother's cooking was thorough. The first Christmas we spent there, my wife couldn't believe it when my mom put the sprouts on at the same time as the turkey. She cooked me sprouts properly, and I couldn't believe these were the same as the khaki balls of hatred I was used to. Delicious. Story 33. Tomatoes, onions, and eggs. Throughout my life, I hated these and used to pick every bit of them from my food and give it to my mom or sister. Then one fine day, my brain went, you know what? We love tomatoes now. Not just tomatoes, but onions and eggs too. Now, my go-to comfort dish is anything with eggs. Story 34. I don't exactly love it now, but I hated soup growing up. It's mostly the broth. Nowadays, I enjoy a good soup. It's not something I'm ordering regularly, but back in the day, I would completely avoid it. Not anymore. Story 35. Coconut. I used to hate it, but now I love most coconut dishes, sweet or savory. Coconut crusted meat, coconut oil popcorn, coconut custard pie, etc. I still hate artificially flavored coconut candies, though. Story 36. Seafood and barbecue. I used to hate barbecue sauce, and now I own 4 stick burner smokers, a propane grill, and a Weber kettle. The same with seafood. I used to hate seafood. Then I moved to Florida when I was 15 and can't get enough of it. Story 37. Spinach. I could not stand it as a kid, since mom always served canned vegetables. My wife introduced me to fresh vegetables after we got married. It opened my eyes and taste buds. My personal theory is that Popeye is a communist plot to poison the youth of America by persuading them to eat canned spinach. Story 38. Fish of any kind. Just yesterday, I got an extra-large jar of pickled herrings and could not get enough. My 10-year-old self would never believe I would love to eat raw fish ever. Story 39. I cannot think of any. I never liked tuna casserole, though. Still do not. I have been something of an omnivore since birth. But I do not like canned tuna, noodles, and cheese. I do not like that noise. Story 40. Canned tuna used to make me gag and had to be removed from the house the moment a can opened. Now, I genuinely get excited to go to Costco for another 6-pack of albacore. Story 41. Broccoli actually growing up was the typical that's rabbit food, but nowadays I love it. It adds a nice texture to most meals and I'll openly ask for it. Story 42. Didn't like home-cooked meals as a child. Sometime in my 20s, I started to love them, and they have been my favorite for 40 years. I only eat fast food when I feel too lazy to cook. Story 43. Oh, how I hated cheesecake. Then I caught pneumonia at 13 years old. I have pretty weak lungs and stopped breathing in the night when I was sick. I was unconscious for 6 days, and when I woke up, the food in the hospital was horrendous and inedible. Out of desperation, my mom brought me a slice of pre-made cheesecake, and it was magical. Now it is my favorite dessert at 22 years old. Story 44. Mango float. Growing up, I thought it was just soggy graham crackers. I ended up missing out on a lot of mango float. I only started eating it 5 years ago, and I'm 28 now. Story 45. Lasagna. My mum's lasagna? Horrifying. My girlfriend and I have perfected our lasagna making game. No bechamel sauce. Instead, single cream poured onto the lasagna sheets with mozzarella sprinkled on top with a thin layer of the bolognese on top of that. Story 46. My mom is very health conscious and would prepare garlic raw, adding it to dishes because it apparently helps your immune system. I went from eating it every time I got the flu to pretty much every day, and in every dish she could slip it in, including salads, pasta, sandwiches, stir-fries, and tacos. I had very few friends after that because I constantly had garlic breath and developed an eating disorder for a while because I didn't want to eat the raw garlic meals anymore. I was adamantly against garlic for years after and never bought it when I cooked meals for myself until someone cooked the juiciest shrimp for me and it included sautéed garlic. I've been using it to season most things again nowadays, but I will never eat it raw. On a similar note, I also have had a similar relationship with onions. It doesn't matter what kind of onion it is or what dish it is. I can't handle it raw but love it cooked or glazed. If guacamole has raw onions in it, I simply won't eat it because every time has been regrettable, despite everyone else's positive opinions about it, and I always end up suffering from a few days of strong onion breath.